ready for some Bengals news? At the Growler, we got you. Hot takes, interviews from your host, Paul Dane Jr.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of the Growler. Paul Dane Jr. here with you, joined today by my buddy in draft preview season, Charlie Goldsmith. Charlie, what's going on?
Would you say I'm the Tate Ratledge to your Amarius Mims and draft preview podcast
Chemistry's
content?
undeniable. The chemistry's undeniable right now. You know, we get you a mullet, you know, and I think we could make something happen. You know, maybe
now.
You know, Jay's the mullet guy. You're here.
That's right. So
here,
he's Tate Ratledge.
You can't take that from him. And
you know
so
what?
I don't want to see that.
I'm Dylan Fairchild. Maybe a little more projection involved, but still battled through injuries. Maybe a little stiff, played with high pads, but physically he's more of a late bloomer.
Familiar with the strike technique. You know what I mean? You fit the system. You fit the system. That's what it's all about. We've got, I hope you did listen to our offensive line show that we went through on Monday, where we made all of these jokes and a lot more else as we dove into the situation at guard and tackle and much, much more. Brandon Thorne was our guest. Go back and listen to that if you haven't. We are flipping over to the other side of the ball today. We're going to the defensive line. Trenches all day here in Bengals land. And that means we are bringing in the man, the myth, the legend, the beast, Dane Brugler, to be our guest to talk all things defensive line and a little dabble in the running back conversation as well at the end. So a little bit of that for you. We are excited about that. We're going to dive into the Bengals situation, some history. Will set the stage. We'll go into where we think this thing is going to go for them at this most important of positions. Anybody pass rush? Can anybody do it? Is anybody capable of rushing the passer? They are in desperate need of someone with some pass rush juice. We will talk about whether they made it happen or not at our post-draft live show. So excited about that. It is back again, as we always do, at our favorite venue, BetMGM Nation Kitchen and Bar, right down on the banks. We'll be there on Tuesday, the 29th at 5 o'clock. We're doing a happy hour show this time. Why? Reds first pitch at 6:40 that night on one of those Tuesday specials. So come on down, double dip. Nobody knows how to double dip more than Charlie, right? You can get some Reds talk. You can have some Bengals talk. Mike Potts, director of college scouting, is going to be our guest, going through all of our picks. So come on down before the Reds game, listen to some Bengals draft talk, maybe head on over to the Reds game at one of the best venues in the city, BetMGM Nation Kitchen and Bar, right down at the banks. Get a cookie, right, Charlie?
You're actually describing what this kind of like, this can be for you, what every day is, you the listener, what every day is for me. Talk to some people at the Bengals, get a turkey burger at Nation, go to the Reds game. For me, that's every day. But for you, the listener, this can be your chance.
Yeah. We should just call the show Living Charlie's Life. That's it. That's what it's all about. Well, we hope that everybody will enjoy it as much as you do. We've got that Monday. Big Mock Monday is coming. James Rapine, Jeff Hobson, myself. We'll go through our big mock exercise that we do every single year. It has been incredibly predictive in the early rounds as we kind of really pinpoint where this thing goes and put our stamp down on where we think the Bengals will pick. One thing that we know is that we will be talking about, though, Charlie, is defensive linemen. They need them. They need good ones. They need someone that can rush the passer. What's your I have a bunch of thoughts here to set the stage before we dive into Dane. And, of course, the Growl Gals have draft questions and another thing they want to talk to y'all about. Love having the Growl Gals on. We'll get to them here in a minute. I want to set the stage first. When you set the stage of where the Bengals are at, what's your big picture view of where they currently stand? Do you have like a take, your standard defensive line take of where they're at right now?
First, I'll look at the class, and I have like a color-coded spreadsheet where I line the class up by position and color-code it by round. And you get through the third round of defensive ends and basically defensive tackles, and you're basically the sixth round of guards as a comparison. You're deep into the fifth round or the sixth round of safeties for comparison. So this is a kind of a blessing in disguise, or really just a blessing for a Bengals team that I still can't believe didn't do more to more aggressively and proactively improve their pass rush in free agency. Again, like my standard take is we have to make sure we talk about the concern of the Bengals pass rush on every episode for the next 6 months, because that's how glaring and obvious it is. But this does give them the actual chance to do something about it because of what the class gives them. Even though there aren't many sure number one things that I think they'll go for, there are a lot of number quality 2 and number 3 options who have the tools to just be better than the guys the Bengals have rushing the passer right now.
Yep. And one aspect that you're going to get into here is where do you go? What would you put above defensive end? Would you prioritize defensive tackle? I think that's going to be a part of this conversation at some point, because there are a lot of names. It's probably a touch deeper at defensive tackle when you get into that day 2 area than it is at edge rush, but there's still a lot of guys in both of those situations. But when it comes down to true value, I kind of go back and forth on this. But I was blown away by something. So my 5-part series that's kind of going through now at edge rush is up today, and defensive tackle will be out tomorrow. And I've finished defensive tackle, and there was one thing that I came up with in a stat dive that I'm having trouble getting past. And that was, I was just sort of looking at, okay, let's look at rookie season pass rush win rates. Let's just look at how guys have done that have drafted in the first 4 rounds. How have they done over the last half decade? And is there hope of guys that pull out of this? Well, when you go through that, I'm going to pull this up here. Here's the top of the list. Okay, when you go back over the last 6 years, and you've got Jalen Carter at 17% as a rookie is the tops. Christian Barmore, Bengals fans, what could have been? Christian Barmore was
he who shall not be named.
He shall not be named. 15.4%. Kobe Turner, 12.7%. Guys up here, Keanu Benton, another guy who seemed like could, certainly is turning into somebody for the Steelers. All these guys up near the top. I want to switch it over to the bottom of this list of all of the interior pass rushers as rookies. So, yeah, there it is.
I can see it.
Chris Jenkins is second to last at 2.9%, and only lower is Zach Carter at 1.4%. These are the lowest when you go back over the last 6 drafts for any rookie interior defensive lineman picked in the first 4 rounds. And it's not close. Mason Smith is third to last at 4.4%. Chris Jenkins is a full 1.5% lower than that. And then Zach Carter, another 1.5% lower than that. And there is, I put them both in here with year 1 and year 2 to see, okay, well, is there a lot of precedent, right, of a big jump of year 1 to year 2? Yeah, it can start low, but a big jump. Not really. It's marginal. There really isn't much to see there. 8.9 on average amongst the group year 1, 9.2 on average. That is above the league average, by the way, the league median, which is about 8.4 for defensive tackles. That's a problem. So to me, when you start talking about, are you going to say, all right, maybe we give edge rush or another position or a tie broken by saying Chris Jenkins can be the answer here? I would direct you to this and say that is potential. That's like roster malpractice to make that suggestion, to make that bet. Not that he can't. These are the lowest 2, by the way, dating all the way back to 2016. Nobody lower dating back to 2016. That guy was Jaron Reed, who turned in. He's still playing. He's at 32 years old, still playing. Nice career. It's not that it can't happen. It's just this is concerning when you talk about what's happening at defensive tackle and how you pull out of it. And it screams, do not bet on Chris Jenkins suddenly becoming a top pass rusher in that spot.
Couple things. So first, we did our non-Trey defensive lineman rewatch reaction show in January. We established on that show, you watched a lot of the tape. I watched every Chris Jenkins drop back pass rush rep. Chris Jenkins isn't a pass rusher. That's not who he is. That's not what he brings to the table. He is a strong physical point of attack, one-on-one style inside guy who's more sound and physical than disruptive. Now, that sounds a lot like BJ Hill, and that brings me to the most surprising move the Bengals, in my estimation, made all offseason, bringing back BJ Hill on that significant 3-year deal when you easily could have had Jenkins slide up into that role, kind of bank on that projection and progress from him against the run and at the point of attack while supplementing pass rush juice around him. Obviously, that's not the direction the Bengals went in. Now, they have no pass rush from their interior defensive line, except for Hill, who did take a step back from a pass rush perspective last year. Comparing defensive end and defensive tackle, it's very, very drastic in terms of where these rooms stand. Defensive end, they actually have 6 guys who I think could make this team: Hendrickson, Murphy, Osai, Sample, Sed Johnson, Isaiah Thomas. And I know those last 2 guys, they are what they are, but they certainly could make this team. But who will be on the roster in 2026? Myles Murphy. But other than that, I can't guarantee or even say with confidence that it'll be any one of those other guys. Now, defensive tackle. BJ Hill, TJ Slayton, Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson, they are all on, contracts with more long-term security than the Bengals have at defensive end. But obviously there's no pass rush there. So at defensive end, you're almost, in my opinion, drafting for someone who can give you a few flashes in 2025 and then start in 2026. If you're going defensive tackle, you need a guy who can rush the passer now. And half these pass rushing defensive tackles that I really looked at are more projections. So that even limits further the defensive tackles I've zeroed in on, just the defensive tackles who are ready to rush the passer right now.
This is a situation where they've got to get it figured. The question is, do you go, how early do you go in? This is going to be I think this is a timing draft. And I think that's all positions, because they have so many needs and because it's a draft flush with starters, not stars. It's what is the timing of attacking this? And I think that's what we'll spend a lot of time discussing in the next week. Is okay. I think we know the setup. We know what they need. They need pass. We lay out this situation in terms of what they have and where they can go. What is is it worth the first round pick, or are you better off supplementing later? I have one more thing. You guys are getting hooked up a day early on the defensive tackle stuff here. I have one more that was fascinating for me from what happened, and that is this. This is the history of defensive tackles selected between 10 and 25 over the last 15 years. They all, and I mean all, have gotten paid. And there's zero regrets. Maybe a Javon Kinlaw regret in San Francisco. But even then, he just got $15 million per year. There are 10 of them. Okay, because Kalijah Cansey and Byron Murphy are not eligible for extensions yet. We're in their first contracts after their rookie deals expired, all at least $15 million, an average of $20.3 million per year. The list is Aaron Donald, Dexter Lawrence, Eric Armstead, Vita Vea, Jonathan Allen, Fletcher Cox, Jeffrey Simmons, Javon Kinlaw, Christian Wilkins, Darren Payne. Find me one guy the Bengals wouldn't just beg for right now on that list. Now, you have to deem one of these defensive tackles worth it at 17. And that probably becomes the question is somebody that's out there worth it? Because they all have a question mark. They all have a yeah, but when you get into that spot beyond Mason Graham, right? And so that's the question to me is anybody that would be available to them 17 like this group, like that group that I just mentioned?
This is a Derek Harmon tweet, graph, paragraph, chart segment of your story. Walter Nolan, there's a lot of projection involved with me there. Shamar Stewart and Mykel Williams, I know you're talking about defensive tackles, but they're all projection. To me, Derek Harmon is the only guy in round one who you could expect realistically impact pass rush juice from in the short term, with still a room to grow into upside in the long term. After that, and we'll hear from Dane Brugler later on this show, and I'll spoil what my biggest takeaway was. He said no one in general. I'll put no one outside of Harmon. No one is the kind of guy you stand on the table for. No one's a guy who you can expect has the clean, smooth fit to be an ace, to be a number one on a defensive line rotation. It's about what you're willing to live with. That makes Harmon again specifically stand out among this group to me. But while there is great depth, I actually don't like the top of this class. It's not like last year's offensive tackle class where you're saying, how the heck is Amarius Mims available at 17? It's not that type of class at the top. It is that type of class later on, specifically defensive end round 2 and 3, and defensive tackle round 3 to me are the nice, strong, meaty areas of this class. And you're probably hoping some of those guys slide a little farther. But at the top, that's great. You'd love to be able to fit more guys into that tier of players you were discussing. But to me, Harmon's the only one there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we'll get a little bit more specifically into those players as we get onto the flip side of this. Let's do this right now. Let's get ready to let's bring in the Growl Gals here. And after that, we'll go and we'll hear from Dane Brugler, the man who wrote The Beast, which, by the way, if you don't know, if you don't have an athletic subscription, The Beast alone is worth it. You can shoot everything I've written, and there's so many stories in there to the sun. And it's still well worth it to have an athletics subscription just for The Beast if you care at all about the draft, which most of you do if you're listening this far into this podcast. So I hope that you would get it. So we'll get to Dane on the flip side. But first, let's get to our great friends, the Growl Gals. All right, now is that time where we get to do one of my favorite things we do every week. We get to welcome in the Growl Gals, Kelsey Kenter and Carrie Matucci from Bar 3 in Marymount. How we doing?
We're great. How are you?
Doing good. We're doing good. We're closer. We're getting so much closer to the draft. It's almost here, and that means we can finally tie a bow on this portion of the program, which is just it's a deep breath. You know, the calm and the happiness you see on the people that come into your guys' place when they finish a really satisfying session. You know, they come out and feel. That's how I'm going to feel on Saturday. And really, after our live show that we do on that Tuesday, the 29th, after that, that's when it's like, so I feel so good.
I mean, that's how you feel after every single Bar 3 class. You just feel that calm satisfaction.
I don't know. I might feel a lot of like my muscles like reacting, saying what exactly is happening. I haven't done a lot of that.
You know, nobody has thanked you recently for what you're putting your body through.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That makes me feel a little bit better. Maybe I don't look as bad as I thought that I did.
It's a physical sacrifice.
That comment came out. I know. Very concerning. Very, very much made me self-conscious. I want to tell everybody though, make sure you guys know that you can go to contact them at marymount@bar3.com or DM them on Instagram at bar3marymount. But right now, if you go to the QR code down here, or you go find the Marymount location on bar3.com, it's semi-annual sale time. It's happening right now, this week and next week, which, you know, for all the regulars out there is 30% off all packages, which is very nice. But for the Growl Pals, for us, 40% off all packages right now at Bar3. Just put in Growl Pal as the promo code, right? Growl Pal.
Growl Pal.
There it is. Put Growl Pal into the promo code and you get 40% off all packages. So if you wanted to buy one, you've been thinking about it, you're like, man, it sounds good. Mother's Day is coming up. Get ahead of it. How good would it feel to put that Mother's Day thought of what am I going to get in the pocket at 40% off right now? This is beautiful. This is beautiful.
It's really the best gift.
And it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it gives to her, it gives to you, it gives to the family, and it gives for a long time. It's not just a massage that lasts for a day. It's not flowers. It's something that she can draw out for a little while. And it's a feeling that she's going to bring home and feel so much better about. And then therefore you're going to feel better about. Everybody feels better.
It's really going to impact the culture of your entire home.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
It
you know,
is.
you just want everybody to be happy. And this is a great opportunity. 40% off. Growl Pal is the code. Go ahead and put that in again. QR code bar3.com. You can find the Marymount location. What do you guys have for me this week?
Yeah, so as someone who is newer to Bengals fandom, I feel that I don't really know that much about the draft, and it obviously is a very large part of Bengals fandom. I'm not a macho football fan.
Not.
Yeah.
So I
Not
have some
yet.
questions.
Not
Yeah.
yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
A lot of the conversation that I've been hearing about the draft is obviously about what do the Bengals need? Who do we need to draft? What positions do we need to draft? Positional value, all of these hot words. But I'm not hearing a lot about who we're up against because,
Sure.
there are 31 other teams that are, going to be in this draft too. So who's my enemy here? Who's going to jump in and snag Booker before we can get him?
Oh, right. So, okay. Good question. Well, this is really interesting in that the knowledge and the information is right now teams are just like, we want no one to know anything. And then it's smokescreen season. And it's lying. This is known as lying season where everybody puts out, oh, well, we might like this guy or let's bring somebody in for a visit. Was it a visit to keep teams off the path of what they're actually trying to do? This time right now, people know who they really want, and they try to make people on the outside think that they don't want those players or they want somebody else because they're worried about somebody trading up in front of them. Like a perfect example is, let's say, there's a lot of easy connections to be made in round 2 at number 49 of Tate Ratledge from Georgia, right? They need a guard. They really need him. He played next to Mims at Georgia. You can see like any team can put that together. Well, if you really like that guy and you're a team, you're looking to jump up ahead. You're always worried about other teams having information about who you really want because then they will jump up in front of you. You see a ton of movement in round 2, especially of teams feeling like they have one guy left on their list and they need to move up in front of somebody else. So this is lying season. You're going to see, you're worried about everybody. Everybody's your enemy right now. Like the Bengals look at it and say, we don't want anybody to know a single thing about anything we're trying to do. Everybody mouth shut. There's no time. And they're always a little bit like that, but there's no time where they're more trying to make sure that nobody knows what they're doing and maybe even putting out some smoke screens, which you'll see a lot of teams do, of pretending that they're into somebody that they're not, in order to try to make sure the guys they really want end up with them, because everybody is your enemy this time of year.
Okay. So some spite drafting might be happening.
I don't know about spite drafting. They're just paranoia. This is the NFL is a league of paranoia, and no time is there more paranoia than right now before the draft because teams are so worried about what they really think getting out there. But you know what? Nobody here, because my smooth segue. You ready? Nobody needs to worry about what anybody's thinking about them or paranoia when you go to Bar 3 in Marymount. Nobody. It's a safe space, a safe haven, a great community to come in and improve mind, body, emotional, physical, all of it.
That's right. No one's looking at you. They're not drafting. We're not drafting you.
We're all in this together.
We're all in this together.
Yes. You're already on the team. You're already on the team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Love it. Again, the semi-annual sale is happening right now, this week and next, for Bar 3 Marymount, which is right down on Wooster Pike, right near Kroger and our good friends at 50 West down there. Growl Pal is the code. Put Growl Pal in, 40% off all packages. Get ahead of any of those gifts, birthdays, Mother's Day, anything you wanted to get. Now is the time to get ahead of that. Use the deal and be a hero, really.
Yeah.
Be a hero for changing the culture inside of your own house and delivering the gift of happiness. What else would you want?
It's really the best gift.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Truly.
Love it. All right. Growl Gals, great as always. Appreciate you joining me. And we will talk to you next week.
Thanks,
See ya.
Paul.
All right. Much thanks to the Growl Gals for joining us here. And again, get that package. We have 40% off. Have you ever done any bar studio work, Charlie?
Pilates were actually a big key to my athletic career, whatever that was.
Really?
Tangent. I'm going to be thinking about the concept of spike drafting for the rest of the week. Would the Bengals be in a better position right now if they just picked guys that they didn't want the Ravens to get instead of taking guys the Bengals actually needed?
There's no doubt if they just took whoever the Ravens were going to take it, probably. You're exactly right. A full spite draft. That might be a good story for the chalkboard, Charlie. Charlie's
who the
spite
Bengals,
draft.
yeah.
Charlie's Bengals spite draft. Just drafting so that other teams in the division or the Chiefs can't get them. Love that. What a great concept. Maybe that's something that we can recommend to Dane next time that we talk to him is if he could do a 7-round spite draft, just who he thinks teams would take to keep divisional opponents from taking them. Next time we'll get to that. This time we had too much stuff to cover. We kept it focused almost solely on defensive line.
On the real draft.
On the real draft, not the spite draft. And so we have that, a little bit of running back talk at the end, as you might imagine, as it always is. Incredible stuff from Dane. Let's get to it. And thanks to all of you on YouTube that are checking us out here. Make sure you hit that QR code. You can support all the people that support us here at the Growler and get to all the links, including Charlie's Chalkboard, which you should be. I hope that you're subscribed to at this point. You should be. And anyway, make sure you check all that out. And the Dane interview is on that page right now. So go check out the Dane interview sitting up there. In the meantime, let's get back to it. You already watched it. We're just going to go on as if you already watched it because we know you did because you're good Growl Pals. All right. Much thanks to Dane for joining. Just awesome stuff as always. What was your primary takeaway from that, Charlie?
Again, I mentioned this earlier, the eye of the beholder nature of this draft. And while there's some sack potential, and he mentioned a few specific guys on round 3, it's not any guys who are swing for the fences, pure sack getters. And that is, again, they might be able to find value there. But if you really want a number 1 defensive end, I mean, that's going to shape the question of the hardest question I've answering for my Bengals draft board, which is where to put Stewart and Williams, compared to like a Harmon or a Starks or an Worry. And if that's lower, then you're kind of sticking with what you've got at defensive end specifically from a pass rush perspective in the short term with who will contribute this year.
Let's do this. Let's piggyback off of what Dane had to say, because I thought that, and I thought the off-field discussion of Walter Nolan and Green and Pierce, which I think is going to play a major role in those guys. It was really interesting from him, the Nolan stuff of, look, there's just a lot of teams that just aren't buying it, that you're going to get in are the Bengals in this year. And I'm in no way comparing Walter Nolan to Jermaine Burton, but in a year where you're coming off of that experience, like we've said this a lot, how knee-jerk will this draft be where any sense of that will pull them off of a prospect? And maybe they don't have that. They brought Nolan in for a 30. Okay. And so if they came away from that visit saying, we feel really good about him, plus the background work that they did at Ole Miss, well, okay. If that all they feel like it checks out, and then they maybe feel like they're getting, a real guy and they would be willing to go there at 17. That very much could be the case. But that's going to be the question there, because I think when you look at his potential and the traits and some of the production, that plays. It's just a matter of if you're sold on the guy compared to somebody like, as you mentioned earlier, Derek Harmon, who is more of the, you're buying this guy. He got into the weight room. He got his weight together, which was a problem at Michigan State. He was the most disruptive player in college football. I've talked to a couple scouts who have said, like, he looks like an AFC North player. Like, he plays AFC North style of football. You could just see him being that type of guy. And so for all of that, he makes a ton of sense there. He's maybe the safer bet, but he probably doesn't have as high of an upside as Walter Nolan does.
At the end of the day, this is still the Bengals. When you look at Derek Harmon, you see different versions of recent and previous Bengals first-round picks with just how clean he is. The size, the length, the quickness, the production, the big game experience, the versatility, the every down tools, the first step. There's a lot that I feel confident in him bringing to the table immediately. I was talking about earlier, too, like the Bengals need defensive or interior pass rush now. Nolan, there is a lot of projection there with me. And he does have great, tools and burst and a bit more conceptual and potential based at this point right now. Is that a place the Bengals can live at defensive tackle when there probably would also be a guy in Harmon who is just so immediate on their board as well? It's funny, a comp too you see with him is like Keanu Benton, who's a guy, I remember there being a lot of Bengals buzz with him at the time. With specific archetypes of players when that transfers, and then you see that player hit in Pittsburgh when there's a similar archetype. Again, like where I'll slot Harmon in along with Campbell and Starks and him and Worry, and the defensive ends, still working through that. We all are. So are the Bengals. That's a really interesting debate. But in terms of if you're just ranking Harmon and Nolan, especially with kind of the off-field stuff that you mentioned with Nolan, I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And then, you get into, something that we touched on with Dane, and this is a huge traits versus production draft. Like you're one side or the other, because it's so drastic, Charlie. Like, you have a guy like Stewart who has like, he's a 10.0 relative athletic score. I mean, he's a freak. He's everything you want to see athletically at the position, and he has like minimal, next to no real production. And so it's going to spark that debate. And could the Bengals go there? Could the Bengals bet on the physical profile and give everybody Miles Murphy flashbacks in a lot of ways? Or do they go away from it? I find that to be a fascinating player, because we know what the Bengals have done. Like they've bet on traits, and you typically see that. Stewart, Mykel Williams, two guys that we mentioned there with Dane that I find fascinating when you get into that 17 area, because they are traits over production prospects, but boy, the traits are special.
To me, Williams is actually Miles Murphy, and Stewart's Amarius Mims, who's just a combination of things that are completely theoretical. Now, I know he had the pressures last year, but Mykel Williams is basically the power version of Miles Murphy. Murphy is like the speed version of Miles Murphy. But when you look at those two guys, like a debate we had in February is, do you trade Miles Murphy and then use that first-round pick to draft a defensive end? And I don't see Stewart or Williams being the guy who immediately becomes the player that the Bengals, goodbye, Trey Hendrickson, go get him. I don't see that here. So because of that, like there isn't the Trey Hendrickson replacement for 2025 in this draft. Now, Stewart and Williams could be the 2026 Trey Hendrickson replacement, and that's what you'd be drafting him for. But because of the need for immediate production, again, like Stewart and Williams, the two hardest players for me to place on this entire board. Kind of looking at some Bengals first-round targets, but the lack of immediate production for a defense that needs pass rush, to me, and has real needs at linebackers and safety, has, for now, I have Campbell and Starks and Harmon ahead of the defensive ends.
Yeah, let's talk about how the depth plays into this, because we see what the top is, and they'll have decisions to make there. The question becomes, when you look down at this second group, because you have to look everything as a combo, and really I would say a trifecta, really, when you consider what the Bengals are trying to do and the depth possibilities. We know that guard needs to be in that mix, and we can have arguments about linebacker and safety, but the positional value thing will happen there. And when you look at the second round, man, that second round and group of edge rushers is really intriguing. Like there's a lot of really nice players that you could see coming and have a quick. I love that spot. And then the third round defensive tackles I really like. I think you kind of talked about that at the top of the draft, whereas that would be really enticing too, where you could go Tyler Booker at 17 and just say, solidify the line, give me an anchor, give me a dude there, and guard is set for the next 4 years. And then go edge defensive tackle, and you've gone trench draft, and that's what this team kind of needs. That'd be a great argument. You could go JT Tuimoloau, right, and then throw in one of the defensive tackles. Who knows? Maybe one of these defensive tackles that maybe have a second round type of grade on them end up slipping to the third just because of who they are. Maybe you get a TJ Sanders, maybe you get a Darius Alexander, maybe it's Ty Hamilton or Ty Robinson, and you drop those guys into that trifecta. Boy, you like that, and so I just feel like I wonder how enticing it will be to play that game and end up using the second and third round depth to try to check those boxes.
It's the, how many, if there should be like a ding every time we say the Bengals need more picks. The extra picks would go specifically, ideally, to a day 2 defensive end. Like, I think it's also really interesting how Dane organized this, and like Dane's the best again. Dane's great. He organized this with, all right, get past the round 1 guys. All right, he starts next up with Donovan Ezeraku, I'm sorry, who's a true DPR with some plus traits. I think he'll end up being he's kind of in that tweener range between 17 and the Bengals 2nd round pick. Then he has James Pierce, who I don't know. I'm not a James Pierce guy. He's kind of in that tweener range as well. But then it's power guy, power guy, power guy, power guy. And then it's basically speed guy, speed guy, speed guy, speed guy. It's you have your Hubbards in one tier, your Sam Hubbards, and then your Joseph Osai's after that. That's how he sees this draft going. He sees those pockets very, he sees it's a bunch of true number 2s who would be available, kind of strong physical power, edge set, has the size to go with it. Then your round 3, there's a nice little tier of designated pass rushers. That's how he sees this draft going. So that's something to keep in mind too. The different style of player you'd probably get in round 2, Tumaloau, Jackson, Birch, Jackson I really like, by the way, Jack Sawyer. And then round 3, you're looking at some more true pass rush guys, Josiah Stewart, Baron Sorrell, Ashton Delote, guys like that. Gelotti, I think that's it.
Gelotti, yeah. I mean, I think you're right, and there's a ton of intriguing guys when you get later in the draft, and that's every draft. It's to me, and we have to kind of circle back on the Trey Hendrickson discussion here, because it's like, what are you even? It's just so hard to do this without a feel for where Trey's going to go. And I'm sure behind the scenes, they feel like they know where this thing's going to go. They're either going to be forcing him to play this out, or even if you're extending him, that you have to feel like they're doing it with a nod that we still need the future. I mean, they're not going to be the type that's going to look at that position. They never have, and not have investments behind those investments. They've done that forever. And so I would fully expect regardless of that deal, it doesn't necessarily change the value, but it might change how early you're willing to go into it. And maybe you're looking at some of these 3rd and 4th round traits guys, and you're trying to find, Carl Lawson, Joseph Osai, these guys that have kind of been that in the past and that have grown into bigger roles.
There's definitely, again, the need for both short-term and long-term production, but for a Bengals defensive end group that, again, Murphy's the only one I know is going to be on this roster in 2026, but also you need more on the edge now. Like, it's a really tricky spot to be in because they do need both those things, and you can't find really, outside of Abdul Carter and Jalen Walker, there isn't a guy in this draft who gives you that current production and future production. So you almost have to pick your lane with what style of defensive end. I could, they won't be able to fill all their needs in this draft. I also see a scenario where they don't take a defensive end because they do have 6 guys that could make the roster right now, and say, you know what, got to get that swing tackle. Sorry, Jerry Montgomery, but this is the defensive end group you're working with. Like, I could see that scenario playing out as well because of how kind of weird of a spot that room's in.
Yeah, and you mentioned 6 guys that could make this roster. They only have 4 defensive tackles on the roster.
Yeah.
It's the top 4. That's it. I mean, you can tell at the very least, that UDFAs are going to have a bunch of these defensive tackles in there. And that's where you can see them prioritizing that with maybe a double up at some point, where it's like, okay, that could be a potential double up position where, okay, maybe you don't go round 1, but you go round 3 and 5. And you figure out something to do there. And again, more picks are needed. So maybe you're talking about the dream for them right now continues to be somebody wanting to come up to 17 and being able to use that to add. It's just such a hard draft. So again, and we'll keep getting into this as it gets closer and you talk about movement, but teams that might be interested in whatever's going to be happening at this quarterback situation between Shedeur and Jackson Dart. And now you're getting this, you're getting the Tyler Shuck conversation is starting to enter, because this is what always happens. You get somebody that teams are trying to push up boards. I think that if you could see somebody thinking, got to get in front of Pittsburgh and wanting one of the quarterbacks, and you could take advantage of that, or maybe the end of some of, in their mind, the blue chip prospects, somebody that sneaks into the mid-teens. That is the way to do so many of these things that you feel like the Bengals need to do, specifically adding to this defensive line room.
To me, those trade up spots that I'm looking for are Williams and guys, people who would be being traded up for. That is Stewart and Williams. Is it a team like the Ravens that has all these extra picks and has been looking for an ace pass rusher for years? And then the other guy's Malachi Starks. We're both very high on, but has that I don't know, that true playmaking range and instincts and versatility that there's just, Emin War is kind of just a different thing. Like Starks really is the only guy in this draft who can do what he can do. So that scarcity could make me see possibly a trade up for a safety in that spot. And then there's always the chance that a team falls in love with one of these kind of tier 2 receivers. But that's the hard part. Like we've said too, it takes two, and it's hard to find that fit right now from a projection standpoint.
So let's wrap this here. What's your my predictions are in my stories up on The Athletic, and I'll reprise that here. But what do you see? Where do you see the defensive line hits coming for the Bengals in this draft?
I really like Harmon. I'm still going to keep Campbell and Starks ahead of him on my board. So for me, that'll lead me to me going, they need that pass rush. Like we've said, Ty Robinson out of Nebraska, great production, some pure raw traits in terms of his speed and his jump, can be that rotational pass rusher. By the way, he was a lead blocker and was a fullback on that offense. So that kind of shows some downhill ability. That's pretty fun. And Zach Taylor likes his Nebraska guys. I have him in the third, and then in the fourth, Barron Sorrell out of Texas. He has the frame, the freaks list athleticism, the 100 miles per hour aggressiveness and relentlessness, base end with pass rush traits. Like I could see him very easily finding a home in Cincinnati. So that's kind of two swings to improve the state of your defensive line. And now taking those guys does take away pushing safety to day 3 for me. And that's to late day 3. And that's something you're not feeling great about. Takes away some swing tackle opportunities. But I'm putting such a priority on pass rush that I did want to address it twice at both end and tackle with the 3rd and 4th round picks.
Yeah, I hear you that. We both landed on Sorrell actually as well in that, I had that up in my series piece on edge rushers. I find myself coming back. I've done the official full circle draft, Charlie, where you always end up talking yourself into different things and going different directions, and you end up right back where you started, where I started this draft season debating between Harmon and Nolan. And I feel like I find myself back there again saying, man, drop a disruptive pass rusher into the middle of this line, and it changes so many things for you, and it affects so many things. And then you look at what I had earlier here in the consistency of hits when you have a guy that is worthy of that pick in the 1st round, how valuable that position is. I have a hard time getting past it with Harmon being kind of my take on that too, as a more solid, I'm more of a doubles guy in this draft. You're looking for starters. This team needs starters. I look at that the same way too. And I think anybody in that group of edges back there, Sorrell, maybe it's a Braden Swinson, maybe it's a Gelati, who knows what happens.
I like Stewart.
4th
Shout
round
out to him
range.
too.
Yeah. There's a bunch of those guys. Diggs from Syracuse, if you're going a little bit further back, who has traits that you like. Finding an edge that you drop in, because look, you have the investments. And then under the assumption that Hendrickson's still here, and I'm not, that the trade-off on that is you're putting another top pick into his place if you trade him away. Under the assumption he's still there, you have him, you have Murphy, you gave a 1-year, $7 million deal to Osai, you're developing. And so to me, that's where I would go and throw another in the mix there that can be a helpful sub-package player this year and maybe develop into something in the future in round 3 and 4. There's a lot of variables, man. There's just so many different directions we go, and that's what makes it fun. So it makes the draft fun, and we will see how it all plays out. Charlie, thanks for hopping in today, hopping in on all of these. This has been a blast. We'll have plenty more. Of course, we'll We'll have mock draft Monday, the big mock Monday that will be coming up. So keep an eye out for that. Looking forward to going through one of my favorite exercises we do every year. And then, of course, the big post-draft live show. Hope to see you down there on the 29th, Tuesday at BetMGM Nation Kitchen and Bar down at the Banks. Live Charlie's life. Talk Reds, talk Bengals. Go to a Reds game. You know, it's gonna be a great time. Looking
And have a
forward to
cookie.
5:00. Yeah, have a cookie. Exactly. Even more. Just playing all the Charlie Goldsmith hits. And while you're doing that, on the way down, listen to Power Stacks with Keith
There you
and
go.
Goldsmith. An excellent show to keep you up to date on the inside of everything happening with the surging Cincinnati Reds. So anyway, all right. Thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we will talk to you next time. Have a good one.